to be hit with a celluloid sledgehammer. Vivian Baring is a fiercely intelligent American professor specializing in the sonnets of the 17th century metaphysical poet John Donne. Diagnosed with late-stage ovarian cancer, she's admitted to a New York teaching hospital to undergo grueling treatment with experimental trial drugs. From the outset, the play captures the loss of control all of us feel upon admission to hospital, as we're stripped, gowned, prodded and scrutinised by a doctorly elite that holds all the power. As a research subject, Vivian is particularly vulnerable. Even her supposedly informed consent to untested treatments is undone by her consultant's insistence that in exchange for his trial drugs, she must withstand whatever side effects are inflicted upon her. To her doctors, Vivian is less a human being than research fodder. We witness her enduring the inevitable side effects, severe vomiting, pain and humiliation. She becomes acutely aware that her body is now, to her medical team, what Donne sonnets used to be to her, an object to be probed and interrogated ruthlessly in order at best to further academic understanding, or at worst, her doctor's own careers. For the whole 100 minutes of wit, we were pinned to our seats in painful silence. Though I knew the play was to some extent a caricature, more relevant to the medicine of a bygone era, the idea that any doctor can treat their patients so callously was deeply uncomfortable. The film was the best possible medicine. It forced us to see ourselves through our future patients' eyes and confront our capacity to wound. But there was more. In 5 long years of medical school, watching Wit was the one, the only occasion as a student when I was ever invited to consider human mortality. I was fortunate enough to be part of a generation of doctors whose first hands-on encounters with the human bodies we dissected were infused with respect, not ribaldry. Our anatomy professor demanded something close to reverence. He expected us to recognise and to be humbled by the last act of generosity from the nameless souls who had bequeathed their bodies to our hesitant blades. But while our experience of dissection may have been respectful, it could not have been described as normal. This was an act of violation, the mutilation of the dead, that tugged at our darkest taboos, and yet at no point was this ever discussed openly. In failing to acknowledge the enormity of what occurred behind the dissection room doors, our tutors unwittingly taught us something profound, that around the dead swirled unspeakable secrets. If we admitted our vulnerabilities when up close with death, we were an embarrassment to medicine. The process of being wrenched ever further from normal social conventions unfolded first with dead bodies and next with live ones. Early on, as an inexperienced medical student, I was instructed by a ward doctor to take blood from an inpatient. Eager to oblige and hungry to prove my competence, I set off to find the patient. I was drawn up short. The man almost glowed from his bed, such was the depth of his jaundice. I was looking at a skull wrapped in yellow-tinted cling film. Here was someone so close to death that his grasp on life seemed absurd, outlandish. I couldn't understand what possible extra facts a tube full of blood could add to the situation. Feeling out of my depth, I bought myself some time by leafing through his medical notes. Pancreatic cancer, run rampant. "Hello, Mr. Smith," I said, with inappropriate breeziness. "My name's Rachel, and I'm a medical student. I've been asked to take some blood. It should only take a moment." I knew it was wrong, but I went ahead anyway, telling myself it was necessary as I tightened the taut bone. Suddenly, he grimaced, teeth bared. "Why won't you all stop torturing me?" he muttered weakly. "Why can't you just Mortified, apologising, I scuttled away, empty-handed, to my team. I'm sorry, he doesn't want anyone to take blood anymore, I told the doctor. Oh, well, yeah, fair enough, I guess. It's not like the results are going to change anything the state he's in, said my senior. It was all I could do not to shout, why couldn't you have figured that out before telling me to go and stab him? The fact was, my rage was really directed at myself. On one level, I recognised that inadvertent cruelty was an inevitable risk in a profession which must temper empathy with detachment. No one I knew deserved a doctor at their bedside when hard medical expertise was what would help them. The challenge, then, for every doctor was to acquire sufficient detachment to be useful while maintaining one's essential humanity. But as students, no one ever discussed this with us. Indeed, doctors didn't seem to acknowledge the emotional toll of their work at all. Instead, they affected to take it blithely in their stride. I think, Dad mused, reflecting back on his decades of doctoring, that you can end up immune to other people's pain precisely because you started out with compassion. You don't want to turn cold, but it hurts too much not to. You can't keep going on otherwise. I thought of one of my professors, of what his daily clinics entailed. As an expert in movement disorders, he endured the experience day in, day out of revealing to new patients an array of dreadful diagnoses. Parkinson's disease, progressive supranuclear palsy, multiple system atrophy. Some of the most remorseless, incurable, vicious diseases whose names he inflicted on others over and over again. Could I really say with conviction that I would survive decades of dropping bombshells that shattered my patients' lives with my warmth and humanity intact? Could any of us with confidence claim that?
The abridger was Anna Magnuson and the producer is Ailey McCready.
BBC Sounds, soul-shifting.
You really want to feel that piece of music. It's got to be something that touches the very core of your soul.
Mood-boosting.
Let me just get this straight, Darth. You're a powerful, evil, authoritarian leader, but you can't cope with a silly little Earth.
It's itchy.
Spine-tingling.
Out of the lunar horizon comes a blue and white ball, which is the Earth. I started to think, wow, that's home.
The power of BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts. Download the app to listen.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. The share price of Britain's biggest bank, HSBC, has fallen to its lowest level since 1995, following allegations of money laundering. Leaked files show the bank allowed fraudsters to transfer millions of dollars around the world, even after it had learned of their scam. HSBC's role is set out in banks' suspicious activity reports, thousands of which have been obtained by news organisations, including the BBC. HSBC says it has always met its legal duties on reporting such activity. The government's chief medical officer is to warn the UK is at a critical point in its fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Professor Chris Whitty and the chief scientific officer, Sir Patrick Vallance, will use a televised briefing to explain how the virus is spreading in the UK. An influential Conservative backbencher has accused the government of treating people like children and ruling by decree through the use of emergency coronavirus powers. The chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady, has tabled an amendment to the Coronavirus Act, due to be renewed next week, calling for further measures to require MPs' approval. Losses incurred by train companies are to be covered by the taxpayer for another 18 months. Rail operators have agreed new emergency contracts with the government. It marks the end of the system of rail franchises under which operators take on commercial risk. Sir Michael Holden ran South West trains and more recently